I left my colleague jobless, blacklisted, and broke because he messed with the wrong woman's code. I should probably feel bad about how thoroughly I destroyed Ethan's career, but honestly, I don't. I sleep like a baby. In fact, I sleep better now than I have in years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the part where I was just Lila Monroe, the quiet software engineer at Sentinel Shield, a shiny cybersecurity startup that dressed itself up like it was the second coming of Google, but behind the scenes was held together with duct tape and male mediocrity. Ethan Drake, yes, even his name sounds like a villain in a bad action movie, was our VP of product. Charming, photogenic, had a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and a brain full of air. Ethan could talk his way through a product pitch like he was auditioning for Shark Tank, but when it came to actual work, nada. Zip. My code, my designs, my sleepless nights, all packaged neatly for him to take to investors. And I let it slide. For years. It started small. I'd write up an idea, mention it in a team meeting, and suddenly Ethan was presenting it like it was his brainchild. I'd point out a potential security flaw. Ethan would parrot it at the next executive call, get praised for thinking ahead. But the real kicker? That time I stayed up 3 nights in a row refining an AI-driven threat detection system that could outmaneuver the top competition. It was my baby, my Mona Lisa in binary. Ethan saw the demo once because I foolishly believed we were a team, and next thing I know, he's pitching it to a major investor like it was all his. Sitting there in a $1,200 suit, waving his hands like he coded a single damn line. And I just stood there, in the back of the conference room, watching him take a bow. I wish I could say I stormed out right then and there, flipped the table, threw coffee in his smug face. But nah, I smiled, nodded, said, "Great job, Ethan." Because that's what you do in tech when you're a woman and the boys' club has a stranglehold on the ladder. But that night, I went home and opened a bottle of wine, sat on my couch in my pajamas, and texted Maya. Now, Maya is the kind of friend you want when you're ready to burn a man's life to the ground, but want to do it legally. A cybersecurity consultant who freelances for government agencies, black hat turned white hat hacker, and my ride or die since we shared a dorm room in college. I sent her 2 words. I'm done. She called me before the wine hit my bloodstream. Who's dead? She asked, casual as always. No one yet, I said. But Ethan's about to wish he was. We stayed up all night, plotting. Because Maya? She doesn't just do revenge. She crafts masterpieces. I wasn't going to quit Sentinel Shield. I wasn't going to walk away. Ethan thought he'd stolen the crown jewel of my career, but I was about to steal everything from him. The worst part? He didn't even see it coming. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come. So, I've always known Ethan was a snake. The kind that sheds his skin but never changes. But I had no idea just how much filth was hiding beneath that $1,200 suit. Maya and I started simple. Emails, Slack messages, meeting recordings. You know, the basic breadcrumbs you collect when you've worked somewhere long enough to know where the bodies are buried. And oh boy, were there bodies. Maya's got a sixth sense for sniffing out dirt. He's too smooth, she said. Guys like that always leave a trail. She wasn't wrong. Turns out, Ethan was cutting corners on cybersecurity protocols, signing off on cheap third-party vendors while billing the company for top-tier services. Basically, selling Sentinel Shield a 5-star meal and delivering a soggy burger in a wet paper bag. He was pocketing the difference and laughing all the way to the bank. But that wasn't even the worst part. We found encrypted folders on his personal server. Maya cracked those open like a walnut, by the way, with NDAs from women in the company. Not 1, not 2, but 4 women had been silenced with payouts. Harassment, inappropriate comments, some even hinted at worse. And guess who signed those settlements? Our friendly HR department, with Ethan whispering in their ear. That made my stomach churn. I knew Ethan was sleazy, but seeing it laid out like that, the screenshots, the documents, the receipts, it turned my professional vendetta into something personal. But wait, there's more. Buried in those folders were financial statements, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, tax dodges, shell companies tied to fake vendors he funneled money through. Classic villain stuff. If Ethan ever had to explain it to anyone, I'm sure he'd call it strategic asset management or some BS like that. Maya, of course, was living for this. I told you he'd be dirty, she cackled, eyes sparkling like it was Christmas morning and Ethan's sins were the presents. Meanwhile, I was sitting there on my couch, wine in one hand, watching my career thief unravel pixel by pixel. The plan crystallized. Expose the fraud. Make it public. Burn him down from the inside out. But first, we needed to loosen the screws. Make Ethan sweat. And that meant hitting him where it hurt, his ego. Step 1. Start leaking anonymous tips to Sentinel Shield's biggest clients. A little whisper here, a quiet warning there. Just enough to plant seeds of doubt. Hey, you know that product Ethan's been selling you? Might not be as secure as he claims. One client pulled out. Then another demanded an audit. Ethan? He was still strutting around the office, clueless. Sending me condescending emails like, let's make sure we're aligned before the next board meeting, Lila. Sure, Ethan. Let's align right after I rearrange your entire life. I'd watch him stroll past my desk, adjusting his cufflinks like he owned the place, completely oblivious that I was winding the noose around his neck. The cracks were forming. And soon, the whole damn thing was going to collapse. Here's the thing about men like Ethan. They're so used to skating by on charm and bullshit that they can't even fathom someone plotting against them. Especially not someone like me. You know, the quiet girl with the messy bun and the coffee-stained hoodie in the corner of the dev room. Which made this next phase delicious. Maya and I called it Operation Gaslight. We weren't ready to drop the bomb just yet. First, we wanted to make Ethan paranoid. Get him second-guessing every move. Because nothing brings out a man's worst decisions like a little fear. So we got subtle. First, the anonymous tips to our biggest clients paid off. One by one, they started making noise, requesting audits, questioning the security protocols Ethan had signed off on. Ethan brushed it off at first, all bravado and fake concern. I'll handle it, he said in a meeting, flashing that fake, reassuring smile. These clients get nervous every Q4. But I watched his knee bounce under the conference table. Then Maya had this brilliant idea. We started dropping internal messages. Little breadcrumbs in the company Slack, sent from an account we hacked that belonged to an old contractor who hadn't logged in for months. We made sure it looked like a disgruntled insider talking to themselves. Wonder if anyone's gonna notice the back doors Ethan left open. Audit's gonna be rough for Ethan. Hope he's got an explanation for that shell vendor. We let those sit, marinate. Ethan never commented on them directly, probably trying not to seem guilty, but HR? Oh, they noticed. They started pinging people, asking questions. I kept a straight face. Sent Ethan my usual, per my last email, responses like everything was fine. Then we scrambled his meetings. Maya hacked the scheduling software, just enough to cause chaos. Ethan would show up to a client call, only to find out it had been rescheduled. Or worse, canceled altogether. He started missing key investor updates, standing in empty Zoom rooms, looking like a fool. By the end of the second week, I watched him pacing the office, sweat forming at his collar. The guy who once strutted in like a GQ cover model was now visibly twitchy. Glancing over his shoulder, snapping at interns. He even had the nerve to send me this. Hey Lila, have you noticed anything weird with the scheduling system? I think we've got some glitches. Glitches. Sure, Ethan. Let's call it that. But the coup de grace in this phase? Oh, it was golden. See, Ethan loved showing off. And one thing he always did after locking down a big deal was post some smug, self-congratulatory nonsense on LinkedIn. So, Maya hacked into his account, bless her, and scheduled a post without his knowledge. The post went live at 2 a.m. Big shout out to the talented women in cybersecurity whose ideas I borrow every day. Couldn't do it without you, winky face. Hashtagged. Hashtag humble brag. Hashtag fake it till you make it. Hashtag thanks ladies. The office was buzzing the next morning. People were sharing screenshots, laughing in hushed whispers. Ethan deleted it within the hour, blamed it on a hack, but the damage was done. He spent the rest of the week spinning, trying to convince people it was a joke gone wrong, a prank, a rogue intern. But the cracks? Oh, they were widening. And I wasn't even close to done. So, after Operation Gaslight had Ethan pacing like a caged animal, Maya and I knew it was time to take the gloves off. Not fully, we weren't ready to crush him yet, but we wanted that first punch to land square on his golden boy jaw. Cue the zero-day exploit. Now, let me explain this for the non-tech folks. A zero-day exploit is basically a big, ugly security flaw that no one knows about yet, not the company, not the clients, not even the hackers. Except Maya. Because Maya is the kind of woman who finds 0 days for fun and saves them like Pokemon cards. Sentinel Shield's big annual product demo was coming up. Investors, clients, press, all there, all eager to see Ethan's shiny new AI-driven cybersecurity system. You know, the one he stole from me. This was supposed to be his moment, the crowning jewel in his career. We made sure it would be. Maya had found a gaping hole in the system Ethan had so proudly presented. Shocker, if you cut corners on security for profit, bad things happen. The flaw wasn't just theoretical, it was weaponizable. So we did. The night before the demo, Maya set up a kill switch, a timed script that would trigger during Ethan's live presentation. But we weren't just going to crash the system. No. That would be too easy. Too expected. Instead, at the exact moment Ethan launched into his RAI is the future of cybersecurity spiel. The massive screen behind him froze, then flickered, then displayed. This is what happens when you steal someone else's work. In bright red, blinking text. Oh, but we signed it. Subtle, but clear. Just 2 letters. LM. The gasp that rippled through the audience? I'll replay that sound in my head on bad days, like it's a comfort blanket. Ethan's face drained of color. I watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, while he stumbled, sweating through his designer shirt, fumbling with the clicker like it might save him. Sorry folks, looks like a technical glitch, he stammered. We'll, get that sorted. Maya and I sat there, sipping coffee like we were watching an afternoon soap opera. The only thing missing was popcorn. But the real magic came after. Because investors don't like surprises. Especially not public ones. The emails started flying that afternoon, clients demanding to know why their state-of-the-art product could be hijacked during a demo. A few politely requested independent audits. Others outright threatened to pull contracts. Ethan? He was panicking. Running from meeting to meeting, trying to spin the story. Hackers, he cried. Competitors trying to undermine us. I kept a straight face, offering helpful suggestions like, maybe we should have another team look at the code, just to be sure. By the end of the week, the board called for an emergency review of the product. Ethan's little empire? It was teetering. And me? I was just getting started. So, Ethan's standing on shaky ground, right? His golden voice shines starting to tarnish. Investors are pissed. Clients are nervous. The board is watching him now instead of just nodding at his PowerPoints. Perfect. Because this was when Maya and I dropped the real dirt. See, while Ethan was busy scrambling to patch the hole in the demo, Maya and I were digging deeper into his offshore accounts, his side deals, his whole sleazy operation. And honestly, the man was a walking HR violation meets financial crime documentary. First, we packaged up every single shady transaction. Kickbacks from third-party vendors. Remember how he'd been sourcing cheap crap while charging for premium? Yeah, those vendors paid him handsomely for the privilege. Offshore accounts in the Caymans and Belize. Classy touch, Ethan. Shell companies tied to fake invoices, because of course he couldn't just embezzle the old-fashioned way. And then there were the NDAs. God, the NDAs. For women from Sentinel Shield, each silenced with payouts. The dates lined up perfectly with Ethan's promotions. Funny how he climbed the ladder just as complaints magically disappeared. Maya hacked into the HR server, which, because of Ethan's brilliant corner cutting, was about as secure as a wet paper bag. We pulled emails, settlement documents, even Slack messages where Ethan flirted, harassed, and gaslit. Oh, but we didn't just collect the receipts. We organized them. A 100-page dossier. Timestamps. Screenshots. Bank records. NDAs. Everything cross-referenced, color-coded, bullet-pointed. A prosecutor's dream. A PR nightmare. And who did we send it to? The board of directors. The SEC, because that financial fraud wasn't going to investigate itself. 3 major tech journalists. Oh, and a little cherry on top? The clients Ethan had been scamming. But we were careful. The leak wasn't traceable. No fingerprints, no digital trails. Just a neatly packaged dossier landing on their desks and inboxes one morning. And let me tell you, the reaction was immediate. The board called for another emergency meeting. The SEC sent their first round of inquiries. One of the tech journalists reached out directly to Sentinel Shield's PR team asking for a statement on the emerging allegations. I sat across from Ethan in the office kitchen, sipping my coffee, while he paced the hallway, white as a ghost. He sent me a Slack message because of course he did. Ethan, you seeing this? Some idiot leaked fake reports about me to the board. I stared at that message. The absolute audacity. Me. Fake? Wow. Who would go to all that trouble? I watched him from over my coffee cup. The man was sweating bullets, trying to figure out where it all came from. Probably suspecting everyone except me. By the end of that day, the clients started pulling out. Not just demanding audits, but straight up terminating contracts. Sentinel Shield was bleeding money, and Ethan? He was the one holding the knife. But he still thought he could talk his way out. That's the thing about narcissists. They never believe the fall is coming until their face hits the pavement. Spoiler alert, Ethan, it's coming. And next, we go public. You know that scene in movies where the villain thinks they've made it, strutting around like they own the place, right before the trapdoor opens beneath their feet? Yeah, this was that moment. Except the trapdoor was public opinion. After the dossier landed in all the right hands, the board, the SEC, the press, it was only a matter of time before someone blew the whistle loud enough that even Ethan couldn't ignore it. Maya and I? We were just waiting for the first domino to fall. And oh, did it fall. It started with an article. Not just some rinky-dink blog post. Tech Times, one of the biggest names in the industry, ran an expose titled, "The Golden Boy of Cybersecurity or Just a Fraud? Allegations Surface Against Ethan Drake of Sentinel Shield." Front page. Full spread. And it was brutal. The journalist had clearly done their homework. With a little anonymous help from us, of course. They laid out the fraudulent vendor deals, the offshore accounts, the NDAs silencing women who'd spoken up. But the kicker? They named names. Ethan Drake. Sentinel Shield. Under investigation. Cue the absolute meltdown. My Slack was blowing up before I'd even finished my morning coffee. Have you seen this? Holy shit, is Ethan going to jail? Wait, does this mean we're all out of jobs? And Ethan? He was radio silent. No posts. No emails. No spin. For a guy who couldn't resist showing off his morning cappuccino on LinkedIn, he was suddenly MIA. I sat in the break room, sipping my coffee, watching the chaos unfold like I was at a front row seat of a train wreck. The boardroom lights were on all day. Closed doors, tense faces, hushed voices. HR sent out a vague email about taking these allegations seriously, but everyone knew the writing was on the wall. By lunchtime, half our clients had pulled out. By the end of the day, Ethan's LinkedIn had mysteriously disappeared. But I wasn't done yet. Because if you're going to burn a man's reputation to ash, you might as well make sure the wind carries it everywhere. Maya's piece de resistance? She hacked into Ethan's personal social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, before he nuked it and scheduled one last post on each platform. At midnight, like a cursed fairy tale. The post? To all the women I stole from, harassed and silenced, I guess I finally got what I deserved. Hashtag fraud, hashtag cybersecurity scandal, hashtag time's up. I wish I could bottle the sheer glee I felt reading those posts go live, watching them get screenshotted, retweeted, shared. By morning, the tech world was frothing at the mouth. Reddit threads, Twitter wars. Think pieces titled The Fall of Ethan Drake were popping up faster than popcorn kernels. Ethan? Toasted. And yet, I still had one last move. Because Ethan might have lost his reputation, his clients, his job, but I wasn't about to let him sneak off to some other company and start fresh. Nope. This was a total annihilation mission. So, after Ethan's public crucifixion, thanks to Tech Times, the Twitter mob, and Maya's midnight masterpiece, you'd think the man would have crawled under a rock and stayed there, right? Nope. Because Ethan Drake still thought he could recover. I heard through the grapevine, because, of course, the gossip that Sentinel Shield was hotter than the coffee, that Ethan was exploring new opportunities. Rumor had it he was reaching out to old contacts, whispering in ears, playing the "I'm a victim of cancel culture" card. I rolled my eyes so hard I almost saw my brain. But I wasn't surprised. Guys like Ethan always think they can charm their way back. That somewhere out there is a CEO just sleazy enough to believe his sob story and hand him another shiny title. Nah, not on my watch. Maya and I called this phase Operation Career Kryptonite. The goal? Make sure Ethan couldn't even get a gig refilling the office coffee machine without someone Googling him and running for the hills. Step 1. The Blacklist Whisper Campaign. Maya's connected. Like, deep in the tech trenches connected. White hat circles, black hat circles, gray hat circles, you name it. She started casually mentioning Ethan's name in those circles, reminding folks about the fraud, the SEC investigation, the NDAs. If you know anything about tech, you know it's a small world. People talk. Ethan's name started popping up on internal Slack channels at competing companies with one common message. Watch out for this guy. Huge liability. We made sure the message got to recruiters too. The ones who headhunt for exec-level positions. His name became tainted. Step 2. The reference poisoning. This one was Maya's idea, and honestly, it was genius. Whenever Ethan applied somewhere, because you know we kept tabs, Maya would spoof a reference check email. Real professional stuff, like she was calling from a major tech company doing a background check on Ethan. Then she'd send a polite, anonymous tip to the real HR department at those companies. Hey, just so you know, Ethan Drake is applying here. You might want to check Tech Times' recent expose. Every single time. We had receipts of him applying. Maya even spoofed LinkedIn job trackers to monitor his activity. Yeah, it was that satisfying. Step 3. The final nail, background check nukes. Maya tapped a couple of her buddies who work with background check firms. Whenever Ethan's name popped up for verification, let's just say the reports came back with bright red flags. Under active investigation by the SEC. Subject of multiple harassment claims. Terminated for cause amid fraud allegations. By the end of month 3, Ethan had no job, no prospects, no chance. I heard from an old coworker that Ethan tried going freelance, offering consulting services on LinkedIn under some weak pseudonym. He called himself ED Consulting, like we wouldn't know who that was. Didn't last long. Maya made sure every client lead he got was greeted with a friendly tip. Careful. That guy's under SEC investigation. We didn't just end Ethan's career. We salted the earth so nothing could grow back. And every day I logged into LinkedIn and didn't see his smug face trying to sell himself as a thought leader. Felt like a holiday. But the cherry on top? I hadn't even looked Ethan in the eye yet. Because face-to-face? That's where I planned to serve the final blow. You know what they say, revenge is a dish best served cold. But personally, I prefer it face-to-face, served hot with a side of you did this to yourself. I wasn't going to let Ethan just fade into obscurity behind a screen. No, I needed to see it. That moment his smug confidence finally snapped. That moment his brain processed I'm done. So I arranged it. Now, I didn't bump into Ethan by accident. That's not my style. I'm a planner. Maya helped me track him down, of course, because once you've blacklisted a guy, it's easy to know where he's trying to crawl back into the workforce. Ethan was working at this tiny IT consulting firm. Nothing fancy. No executive suite. No leather chairs. More like dingy cubicles and flickering fluorescent lights. Honestly, perfect. His fall from grace embodied. So, I set up a meeting. Through an alias. I requested cybersecurity consulting services for my new startup. Ethan couldn't resist, of course. He needed the money. He thought it was his comeback. When I walked into that sad little office, Ethan looked up from his desk, his once pristine GQ suit traded for a wrinkled button-up and a tie that screamed $9.99 clearance rack. His eyes squinted at me, not recognizing me at first. Then, I watched the color drain from his face. Elila. His voice cracked. I smiled. Warm. Professional. Deadly. Ethan, I said, taking a seat across from him like I wasn't about to wreck whatever scraps of his dignity were left. He sat there, blinking. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It was everything I hoped it'd be. I heard you were offering consulting services, I said casually, glancing around at the sad excuse for an office. Had to see it for myself. Ethan cleared his throat, tried to pull himself together. Look, Lila, I don't know what you think. Oh, I know exactly what I think, I cut him off, leaning in. I think you stole from me, harassed half the women at Sentinel Shield, embezzled money, and thought you could walk away clean. He flinched like I'd slapped him. But here you are, I said, gesturing to the peeling paint, the coffee-stained carpet. Consulting for pennies. Ethan leaned forward, trying to salvage something, anything. This is harassment, he sputtered. I could sue you. I laughed. Actually laughed. God, it felt good. You really want to go down that road? I raised an eyebrow. Because I've got enough evidence to remind the SEC you exist anytime I want. His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists on the desk, knuckles white. I stood, placing one of Maya's calling cards on the desk, a simple black card with a single skull embossed in silver. Remember, Ethan, I said, straightening my blazer. You only got this far because I let you. Next time I check in, you might not have even this. I turned and walked out, heels clicking across the cheap linoleum, never looking back. Outside, I took a deep breath. Smiled. Ethan Drake, the man who once stole my work, my credit, my voice, had been reduced to a broken shell in a crumbling office. And me? I was free. But Ethan's reckoning still wasn't over. Because next, his financial ruin begins. At this point, Ethan was done. Publicly humiliated. Blacklisted across the entire tech industry. Reduced to consulting out of a shoebox office that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. But me? I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Because Ethan still had money. Not as much as he used to, sure, but remember those offshore accounts? The kickbacks? The shell companies? Yeah, he had some cash hidden away. And I wanted it gone. I wanted Ethan to feel what it was like to sit at his kitchen table staring at a negative balance, wondering how the hell he was going to pay rent. The same way I'd sat in my apartment after that demo he stole, wondering if I was ever going to get credit for my own work. So Maya and I did what we do best. We followed the money. Now Maya? She doesn't just hack, she maps. Every shell company Ethan funneled money through, every vendor he used to launder kickbacks, we traced it all. We followed his money like it was a digital breadcrumb trail through the sewers. And guess what? Ethan, in all his brilliance, had made some sloppy mistakes. One of his shell companies? Still registered under his real name. Another? Connected to his personal bank account. Amateur hour. We handed it all, every single document, to the SEC. But we didn't stop there. Maya found something else. See, Ethan had a few investors of his own. Private guys. Real sharks who don't like being lied to. Turns out, Ethan had sold some of them on fake stakes in Sentinel Shield projects that never existed. Oh, you should have seen Maya's grin when she found the contracts. So we tipped them off. Anonymously, of course. I can only imagine how that went. Angry investors, financial regulators breathing down his neck. Ethan's precious offshore accounts? Frozen. His assets? Seized. I heard from a very reliable source, Reed, the office gossip queen, bless her, that Ethan had to sell his car to cover legal fees. That luxury penthouse downtown? Gone. Repossessed. He was spotted moving in with his brother in the suburbs. From $1,200 suits to sleeping on a pull-out couch. But the piece de resistance? We arranged for one last creditor to come knocking. Remember that tiny consulting gig Ethan was scraping by on? Turns out, the company's owners wanted their money back when they realized Ethan's reputation was more toxic than a gas leak. They sued him for fraudulent misrepresentation. He couldn't pay. He defaulted. I'm told Ethan filed for bankruptcy not long after. It was beautiful. A man who once bragged about his portfolio over $400 bottles of wine now trying to scrape together change for ramen noodles. And me? I was just warming up for the grand finale. Because there was one last thing I had to do. Ethan Drake was bankrupt. Not just financially, but professionally, socially, hell, I wouldn't be surprised if his soul filed for bankruptcy too. From the glossy executive who stole my work, my credit, my voice, to a man living with his brother, eating humble pie for dinner every night. I'd be lying if I said I didn't occasionally check up on him. You know, purely for research purposes. Like the time I stumbled across his desperate attempt to start a YouTube channel offering cybersecurity tips. 6 views. 2 dislikes. 1 sarcastic comment. Bro, you got hacked at your own demo. I didn't even need to reply. The internet handled that for me. But revenge? It's not just about watching someone fall, it's about knowing you're finally free. So I booked a table at Mastro's, the kind of place Ethan used to name drop during investor dinners. Candlelight. White tablecloths. Steaks the size of my head. And I brought Maya, of course. My partner in crime. My ride or die. We dressed up, heels clicking like the sound of power moves. Maya wore this sleek black dress that could kill a man on sight, and me? I wore red. Because why not? Halfway through our second glass of champagne, I pulled out a little black envelope. Maya's eyes lit up. Is that? I grinned, sliding it across the table. Inside? One single share of Sentinel Shield stock. Not much, sure, worth maybe $1 now that Ethan had burned it to the ground. But symbolic as hell. I'd bought it right before the company folded completely, just to say I own it now. Just like I'd owned Ethan's downfall from start to finish. I raised my glass. To the one thing he never had, I said. Maya clinked her glass against mine. What's that? I smiled. Integrity. We laughed loud, carefree, not a trace of the tension I used to carry around like armor. I used to wonder if Ethan's approval meant anything. If I was overreacting. If I should have just taken the hits quietly. But that night? I knew. I'd reclaimed my place, my voice, my worth. Ethan could never rebuild what I'd taken from him. But me? I was just getting started. As we left the restaurant, I caught my reflection in the window, strong, steady, smiling. I'd spent years letting someone else write my story. Now, I'm the author. The end. Or, as I like to call it, the beginning of me.